All right, AP Psych, this starts our next part of the unit, intelligence. So main thing we're looking at here is the idea of intelligence, the problems of that idea, and then the different intelligence theorists and what they have to say about how many intelligences, or should there be a common score among all of one, or common score to represent one intelligence score, or multiple, basically. So when we look at intelligence itself, obviously it's usually it's a little more difficult to define than memory, just because, like, for example, in our school, different teachers might label different students as intelligent just because they're successful in that one area. So when we look at the most typical definition is the ability to gather the information, what you've learned, what you can remember, so we have the learning and memory, and then use it in productive ways. If you know the information, or you have the ability to do something, but you don't use it in a productive way, that signifies that the person is not intelligent. So the main thing here we have to remember is this whole idea of productive ways. So our two basic types of intelligence: crystallize, this is going to be your overall wisdom. This is going to increase with age. So we can look at vocabulary, semantic memories, increases with age again. This would be like if you've ever noticed your parents, your grandparents, people older than you, people you would consider wise, can do a crossword puzzle faster than you. That's because they have more build-up vocabulary, they have more build-up knowledge. Now for young people, what you're representing is fluid intelligence. You can solve problems quicker, you can adjust quicker, you can think outside the box. Like a lot of you probably demonstrate a good amount of social fluid intelligence by, if you know you did bad on the test, by the time you get home, you already have different excuses lined up to give to your parents. That shows that you're thinking outside the box, that you're using this fluid intelligence. It might not be in the most productive ways, but to everybody, but to the student probably would be, because it may save them from getting in trouble. So really when we think about this, it's thinking outside the box. How fast can you solve a problem with or without experience or education? Often your IQ tests are measuring fluid intelligence. Now, for example, like a crystallized intelligence test would be your AP test at the end of the year. You should have built up a lot of vocab and semantic memories of AP Psych, so that becomes the crystallized intelligence. So like SAT, ACT, college entrance exams, things you don't necessarily have experience with, are going to be fluid intelligence tests. And then like your end of year test, end of unit test, those are going to be your crystallized intelligence tests. And obviously this is going to decrease with age. This is going to increase with age. One of the reasons this decreases with age, if you look at how you go throughout life, high school and college, you're required to be more fluid in your intelligence because you're learning about different subjects. Once you get into the work world, your job is essentially, there'll be a little change in skills needed for the job, but it's essentially going to be the same. So as you get into your job, your profession, you don't need this as much necessarily. You need more of this. So environment, age, different things like that influence the buildup of these two. So debates on intelligence. The first one, reification, giving a numeric score to a broad concept, meaning, so basically this concept of intelligence means different things to others. Or a concept with different forms, book, street, and creative smarts, trying to give that a numeric score of a broad definition, a broad concept. That's not necessarily a good thing to do. It's kind of like the idea of an athlete. An athlete to different people, or an athlete is really different in different sports. Like a basketball coach is going to look for different things than a football coach. Now there are some commonalities, but there are some specific skills that go with it. So this reification, that's almost like trying to put a numeric value on whether how high you jump, how fast you run, and that equating to the playing field, which necessarily doesn't, just like intelligence. You can have a kid who scores off the charts on tests, but he doesn't perform well in the classroom. There has to be something. So it's almost like the whole idea of intelligence is kind of a hit or miss subject. And then the other idea, the other debate is one intelligence versus many forms. Are intelligent people good at all subjects, or can they be extremely intelligent in one area and lacking in other? There's going to be evidence on both sides, and the theorists are going to use savants and also test scores of generations of intelligence tests to try to prove this. Basically, what we're going to look at, we still don't have an answer to this, and it could be different for other people. Some people may be good at everything, some people may only be good at certain things. So, one intelligence score, there's only going to be one theorist here, so this is going to be Spearman. He believes in what he calls the G factor, the general factor of intelligence. So, if you take an intelligence test, there might be, say, math, vocab, language comprehension, some type of science or problem solving skills. Basically, his argument with his stats is if a person does well in one area, in one subject, they're going to do well in all others. So he's going to support the idea of a general intelligence. He would argue that people who are good in one area, as opposed to, say, the other areas, they are choosing to be good in one area. It's kind of like the idea that everybody can be a good artist, but some people have shut out the creative side of their mind, their brain. So this is going to work well for analytical intelligence, book smarts, because in school we usually see a common theme. You'll have an AB student you'll have more AB students instead of AC, DF, BCA students. So there's usually a commonality according to Spearman. And he's going to use this process of what we call factor analysis, which is basically you take the test, you break it into the different subjects. So how many math questions were there? How many language comprehension questions are there? You break that into the different subjects, and you see, are there commonalities in the subject score? And according to Spearman, he says yes. But Spearman's going to be the only one intelligence score, so it's almost like this whole part of the unit is Spearman versus the world. So the multiple intelligence theorist starts with Thurstone. He used 56 different intelligence tests and 7 specific clusters. So he believed that there were 7 distinct types of intelligences. So you have your math smarts, you have your language smarts, you have your science problem solving smarts, you have your debating skills, say like a history class, potential social studies class would use. So he's going to argue there are 7 different distinct types of intelligence. Gardner, he's going to argue that there's 8 different intelligences, and he's going to study what we call savants. Savants are someone who is very, very limited in most areas except one. It's like you have calendar counters, you have language savants, you have mathematics savants, you have memory savants. They're really, really bad in, say, 7 areas, but they're really, really good at one. These would be like almost like a prodigy kid. Like music, athletics, all of them are there. And then Sternberg, he's going to argue that there's only 3 types. So basically what he's going to take Gardner's 8 and then break them into these 3 types. So we have our analytical, and that's going to be our book smart. So this is what the intelligence tests measure. You're going to have your creative intelligence tests that make us adapt to novel ideas, situations. So it's almost like a problem-solving scenario. You've never experienced the problem. The quicker you solve the problem, the more creative you solve the problem, the higher you're going to score. And then practical intelligence, this will just be your street smarts. So street smarts, novel or original ideas, original intelligence, and then your book smarts. So this would be memory. This would be more of your memory. This would be more of your application. And then this would be more of your problem solving. So really the difference is as you go down, it's just how many intelligences they say. Thurston says there's 7. Gardner says there's 8. Sternberg says there's 3. Most people use more of Sternberg's stuff today. But we'll look at Gardner more in depth because he's really the one that kind of changes this whole idea. He's going to actually have more evidence than Thurston. So if you had to represent this in, say, a real world situation, your one intelligence, notice they're all A's and B's. Your multiple intelligences, A, D, C, B, F, So like their language skills would be very good, but their mathematics skills would not. So there you'd have the multiple, there you'd have the single. Now there's a lot of evidence to support both. So when we look at Gardner's, here's Gardner's 8. So linguistic, logical, those would represent your book smart, your analytical intelligences, according to Sternberg. Your creative would be your music, your spatial, your bodily kinesthetic. Those would be your creative. And then your practical, interpersonal, and then the naturalist. Those would be your street smarts. So basically what Sternberg does is he just breaks these 8 into these 3 sections. Now the last part, the last type of intelligence we kind of look at, emotional intelligence. This is by Goldman. A good amount of debate as to whether this really exists, or are we trying to stretch intelligence too much. The debate is how much control do we have over our emotions? Like when the amygdala kicks on, can we really truly shut that down? An easy, good example of emotional intelligence people would be actors. The more believable an actor is, the more emotional intelligence they demonstrate. So the test of emotional intelligence is going to have 4 components. The emotional intelligence itself would be represented by someone who's both self and socially aware. And so your 4 different distinct types: perceive emotion, you recognize it in people's faces, like you can read people; understand emotion, you can predict, if I do this, how is this person going to act. They can manage emotion, so they can control their anger, and then they can use emotion. If they can use their emotions to adapt, to be creative, or to get what they want. Like if you would have a significant other who potentially fake cries or pretends to be mad to manipulate you, they do have a high understanding of emotional intelligence. That's one part of it. And then the really debate is this manage. How much, like at some point, not everybody's going to be able to control it. So those are the big ones. These are really the big people that you need to add to your second part of your outlines. So if they're not mentioned in this presentation, screencast, PowerPoint, whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't list them. I wouldn't worry about listing them, just because these are going to be the main important ones. There's that.